Welcome to the Cosmic Eye Show, where we explore spiritual ideas and books that help you live a better life. Hosted by spiritual teacher and author of If You Can Worry, You Can Meditate, Jason Napolitano.
All right, hello, welcome to the Cosmic Eye Show. I am Jason Napolitano, one of your hosts, and I have my co-host Chris Sheridan on the line. How you doing, Chris?
Great, good to be here.
I'm happy to have you here again and every week. We are both authors. I have a book out called If You Can Worry, You Can Meditate. And Chris has a book out called The Spirit in the Sky. My book is available on Cosmic Eye, CosmicEye.org, or on Amazon, of course. And Chris's book is available at chrissheridan.com or on Amazon. And we're both spiritual thinkers and teachers, and we like to share what we learned over these years, hopefully, in some way or another, on this show. Discuss classic books and spiritual ideas here on Cosmic Eye. So thanks for joining us today. We are going to do a little bit of a different book today. It's actually a little pamphlet, and it is called The Golden Key. It is by Emmet Fox, and it's less a book really than it is a pamphlet. I mean, at maximum it's about 11 pages. That's the one that I have, and the one that you have is a little shorter.
Yeah, it's about 6 pages. 6 very small pages.
So the whole thing, I mean, yeah, it's very small. It's a tiny little pamphlet, and that's kind of the genius of this. We're going to have some really great things to look at. The beautiful thing about this book, and he talks about this in it, well, not this book, but this pamphlet, he talks about this in it, is that it is very practical, and it's about dealing with problems and not about abstract philosophy, which oftentimes when we're in over our heads with a problem or an issue or anxiety or some kind of a sickness or whatever, you know, we don't have time to dig through a bunch of philosophical manuals to figure out the problems of the universe or what have you. We just need some help. And that's what really this little pamphlet is designed to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to read through the whole thing since it is so short. And Chris is going to start. He's going to read the foreword, and then I'm going to read a few pages, and then he's going to finish up. So we'll just jump right into it. So go ahead and start with that foreword whenever you are ready, my friend.
Okay, and this is copyright 1931. Just put time context on it. Okay, so forward.
Oh, actually,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Let me stop right here. But they can get this very close to the version that you're reading on. It's on Unity, isn't it? Is that where you downloaded that PDF from?
Yes. Unity.
It's unity.org, I think,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah. And so just go to unity.org and download the Golden Key. And if you want to follow along, it's slightly different than the one that I have, but it's substantially the same. And that's the one that Chris is going to be reading from. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
so go ahead.
Yeah, good to have a resource to follow along. And it's not in the public domain, so I think Unity may even sell printed versions of it as well. Okay, forward. I have compressed this booklet into 6 pages. Had it been possible, I would have reduced it to 6 lines. It is not intended to be an instructional treatise, but a practical recipe for getting out of trouble. Study and research are well in their own time and place, but no amount of either will get you out of a concrete difficulty. Nothing but practical work in your own consciousness will do that. The mistake is made by so many people when things go wrong is to skim through book after book without getting anywhere. Read the Golden Key several times. Do exactly what it says, and if you are persistent enough, you will overcome any difficulty. Emmet Fox.
All right. So I'm going to get into the main text of the Golden Key by Mr. Emmet Fox. Scientific prayer will enable you to get yourself or anyone else out of any difficulty. It is the golden key to harmony and happiness. I'm going to read that again. Scientific prayer will enable you to get yourself or anyone else out of any difficulty. It is the golden key to harmony and happiness. To those who have no acquaintance with the mightiest power in existence, this may appear to be a rash claim. but it needs only a fair trial to prove that without a shadow of a doubt it is a just one. You need take no one's word for it, and you should not. Simply try it for yourself. God is omnipotent, and we are God's image and likeness and have dominion over all things. This is the inspired teaching, and it is intended to be taken literally at its face value. The ability to draw on this power is not the special prerogative of the mystic or the saint, as is so often supposed, or even of the highly trained practitioner. Everyone has this ability. Whoever you are, wherever you may be, the golden key to harmony is in your hand right now. This is because in scientific prayer, it is God who works and not you. And so your particular limitations or weaknesses are of no account in the process. You are only the channel through which the divine action takes place, and your treatment will be just the getting of yourself out of the way. Beginners often get startling results the first time, for all that is essential is to have an open mind and sufficient faith to try the experiment. Apart from that, you may hold any views on religion or none. As for the actual method of working, like all fundamental things, it is simplicity itself. All you have to do is this: stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. I'll go ahead and read that again because that is the golden key. Stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. This is the complete rule. And if you only will do this, the trouble, whatever it is, will disappear. It makes no difference what kind of trouble it is. It may be a big thing or little thing. It may be concerning health, finance, a lawsuit, a quarrel, an accident, or anything else conceivable. But whatever it is, stop thinking about it and think of God instead. That's all you have to do. It could not be simpler, could it? God could scarcely have made it simpler, and yet it never fails to work when given a fair trial. Do not try to form a picture of God, which is impossible. Work by rehearsing anything or everything that you know about God instead. God is wisdom, truth, inconceivable love. God is present everywhere, has infinite powers, knows everything, and so on. It matters not how well you may think you understand these things. Go over them repeatedly. But you must stop thinking of the trouble, whatever it is. The rule is to think about God. If you're thinking about your difficulty, you are not thinking about God. To be continually glancing over your shoulder in order to see how matters are progressing is fatal, because it is thinking of the trouble, and you must think of God and nothing else. Your object is to drive the thought of the difficulty out of your consciousness, for a few minutes at least, substituting for it the thought of God. This is the crux of the whole thing. If you can become so absorbed in this consideration of the spiritual world that you forget for a while about the difficulty, you will find that you are safely and comfortably out of your difficulty, that your demonstration is made.
In order to golden key a troublesome person or a difficult situation, think, now I am going to golden key John or Mary or that threatened danger. Then proceed to drive all thought of John or Mary or the danger right out of your mind, replacing it by the thought of God. By working in this way about a person, you are not seeking to influence his conduct in any way, except that you prevent him from injuring or annoying you, and you do him nothing but good. Thereafter, he is certain to be in some degree a better, wiser, and more spiritual person, just because you have golden keyed him. A pending lawsuit or other difficulty would probably fade out harmlessly without coming into a crisis, justice being done to all parties concerned. If you find that you can do this very quickly, you may repeat the operation several times a day with intervals in between. Be sure, however, each time you have done it, that you drop all thought of the matter until the next time. This is important. We have said that the golden key is simple, and so it is. But of course, it is not always easy to turn. If you are very frightened or worried, it may be difficult at first to get your thoughts away from material things. But by constantly repeating some statement of absolute truth that appeals to you, such as, there is no power but God, or I am the child of God, filled and surrounded by the perfect peace of God, or God is love, or God is guiding me now, or perhaps the best and simplest of all, just God is with me. However mechanical or dead it may seem at first, you will soon find that the treatment has begun to take and that your mind is clearing. Do not struggle violently. Be quiet but insistent. Each time that you find your attention wandering, just switch it back to God. Do not try to think out in advance what the solution of your difficulty will probably turn out to be. This is technically called outlining and will only delay the demonstration. Leave the question of ways and means strictly to God. You want to get out of your difficulty. That is sufficient. You do your half, and God will never fail to do his. And he ends with a quote, "Whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved."
Nice, nice. Beautiful reading. And that is, a deceptively simple little text, but just packed with meaning and jewels of wisdom. So we're going to kind of break it down and look at some of the things that we found to be most enlightening and most important in it. So we'll look at a few of those and then find out how this book might be able to help you, the listener. All right. So the thing that we were looking at first, one of these ideas that I liked a lot in it was where he speaks at the very beginning, and he talks about how the ability to draw on this power is not the special prerogative of the mystic or the saint or even the highly trained practitioner. I found that to be a very important piece of information and quite valuable to me, because oftentimes I think we focus on spiritual material and we think that, only righteous people or, priests or pastors or, those trained mystics are able to call on God or to work with the divine power. But really what this book is saying, and what Jesus said as well in his teachings, and many other teachers have said this, is that we're all capable of that, regardless of our training or understanding of God or of the divine world. Did you like that section?
Well, I did, and it really kind of blows all that out of the water, that any excuse somebody might have or, misgivings about whether or not this prayer is going to work, this scientific prayer. If it works just as well for the novice as it does the expert, so-called, in a certain spiritual field, then it's for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's really great. It's very practical, and it allows you to get right to it. Oh, well, I need to learn how to meditate. No, you don't. I mean, you do, but you should. Yeah, it's a great idea, but it's not whether or not this golden key process works for you is not dependent on even what you believe. He went on to say, regardless of what your spiritual beliefs are, just give it a try.
Yeah, exactly.
But give it an open and willing try.
Sure. Dovetailing off of that, he says at the end, we have said that the golden key is simple, and so it is, but of course it is not always easy to turn. I really like that sentence, because it like meditation, it's fairly simple to learn, but oftentimes it's not easy to sit down to practice. It's not easy when the mind throws up a lot of resistance or what have you. I think the golden key is very similar to that, in that it's simple to learn, but in the moment of trouble or strain or strife, we have to focus our minds back on God and not get caught up in the difficulty itself. I actually kind of used this was a combination of some other things as well, with some of my own challenges recently, and had some bouts with some pretty heavy anxiety and fears and so on that came up, and I really I used this golden key to work through that, and found it worked like a charm. It really is a very simple tool, and it's a way to take your mind off of the difficulty, and whether it's physical, mental, spiritual, financial, or what have you, and focus it on that bigger power, that greater power, And it's really a lot like in AA, I think, when they say, to surrender it to a higher power. Would you agree with that?
Well, I would, and that's, I think really what he's getting at is to get yourself out of the way. You have to be involved, but the thing you want to be involved with is not thinking about the problem and thinking about higher spiritual, ethical, and benevolent forces, beauty, love, harmony, all those good things that are associated with God or the divine power or the universe that's providing and always available. But as far as the ego and this constant need to feel like we're somehow either saving the world or saving ourselves or changing another person, even changing ourselves. Someone like Alan Watts would even say that, well, geez, that's the height of the ego, is to think that you can even change yourself, because that becomes a desire and that becomes an ego thing, and that's not what real transformation is. It's more getting that part of you out of the way, so the higher forces can just naturally flow through. And you don't, again, with the part you had mentioned earlier about not having to have any particular expertise, that it also points to the fact that this power is always there. It doesn't have to be cultivated or conjured up. It's always there. We just have to be still long enough to hear it and quiet our activities down enough for it to get to work. I know people often get a sickness or some kind of illness, and then they're in bed for 2 or 3 days. But it was probably because their body knew that they were so overstressed, they were exhausted, overworked, or something, and it was really just the body's way of saying, "Hey, look, I need a break," And the same thing
forces a break, doesn't it?
It does. It forces the issue, but this is a way that you can consciously force or make that break. And the simple part of this program is and maybe one of its more difficult aspects, because how can this problem that I have, if it's a health concern or personality conflict or anything that's going on, a demon I've had for my whole life, how can this complex, very difficult problem be solved by such a simple technique? And it's true, though, most of the best things are simple, but and that's the ego mind again, we want to make things complicated, because then we have to be involved and we have to do this, and then there's this stage and we have to get through this other part of it. And so that kind of works in the disbelief too. Well, so you have to get over that. You have to just embrace the fact, okay, maybe eat right, get some sleep, be nice to people. Some of the best advice in the world is simple, but it can be hard to put into practice because we have complex lives and live in a complex world.
But we overcomplicate it to a large degree, and that's, I think, what he gets into when he's saying, I like what you said about getting yourself out of the way, and he did mention that in the text. But I'm going to repeat something I liked, where he says, in scientific prayer, it is God who works and not you. And so your particular limitations or weaknesses are of no account in the process. You're just taking the ego out of the way. You're getting it out of the way. It's almost as if you're cleaning a window to let the light in or something. You don't, you don't necessarily need to create a sun. You just need to open the window and clear the window to allow the rays to come in. So it's to kind of get back to the heart of this too. I like the simplicity is really it's deceptive. Stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. Take your mind, really what he's just saying is take your mind off of the problem. Stop focusing on the problem. Stop, and I talk about that in my book as well. It's the same sort of thing when you have anxious thoughts or anxieties or negativity running through your mind constantly. You can just as soon have positive thoughts, constructive thoughts, peaceful thoughts running through your mind just as simply. It's a choice. We follow we follow our thoughts, but we have some, we have control over what we choose to think about. And really what he's saying is just to fill the mind with the beauty and the power and the solution-oriented nature of God, and stop limiting ourselves with the ego or with the problem. You think about the problem, you're going to create more problems. You think about God and infinite wisdom, and you're going to solutions. It's fairly simple. And I think what I was reminded of was Matthew 6:33, where Jesus says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." It's like he's saying, go to the source, and all of the problems, or the sort of, I don't want to say petty, but the material issues in life, health and finances and friendships and work situations and lawsuits or whatever, all of these things will take care of themselves, in a sense, if you're acting and thinking and creating righteousness. And righteousness simply it's not about being pure or perfect or what have you. It means connecting yourself to the source and thinking about and embodying God's creative nature and wisdom. Do you agree with that?
I do. And I think there's sort of a twofold situation that is faced, that if you do think about the problem, you are reinforcing it. You're just making it stronger and perpetuating it. But we have the trouble with letting it go is we just, feel like we have to be involved, or that, oh my gosh, I need to be, working on this. And the notion that there is this problem or this difficulty is already well known. Your heart knows it, your mind knows it, and you've probably already expressed it enough. Otherwise, by staying in it, it's hard not to stay in it. It's like we want to let it go, but what's, don't I have to do something? And I feel like I'm doing nothing, but it's not doing nothing. Like you said, opening the curtains or cleaning the window. You are doing something. There's a notion from medicine. I'm not sure where the quote came from, but it says the physician dresses the wound, God heals the body.
That's beautiful.
You don't heal the cells in the skin and make a scab and a scar and all. The body does that all by itself, but your job is to keep it clean so it can do its job. So the same thing analogy. Really here. You're not hindering it, and you're not. They call it licking your wounds. The reason why you don't do that keeps it from healing. So this. Yes, you want to be involved, but your involvement really involves involving you less, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. It's a funny way to put it, but really that is exactly what he's saying. It's get yourself out of the way. Use your ego to get your ego out of the way. It's paradoxical, but it's part of the mystery of our human consciousness is that we do use the ego and the consciousness to kind of get that rational mind out of the way.
And rationally, if you want to take a logical approach, if you are facing a difficult situation, and we all do from time to time, perhaps all the time,
sure.
Haven't you already tried thinking and worrying and planning and attempting and maneuvering and contriving and reading this book and reading that book? I mean, at some point, you've already tried these methods of the ego, and they make rational sense, and it's personal responsibility, and you want to do your best to do what you can to take care of yourself and others and manage your situation. But at this point, I mean, this I think is where you can get an opening to where you are open and willing to at least try this new method of this new approach, because you've already tried.
Well, that brings us, exactly, and that brings us back to the beginning of it, where he talks about you don't need to try to have faith, or you don't need to necessarily believe a certain thing or whatever. Just try this methodology out and see if it works for you or not. That's very practical as well. He's not, he's not saying you need to believe this because I'm telling you. He's saying you need to try this out and see if it's experientially true for you. Is it something that works for you? That's the scientific part of it. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I love too the part we were speaking a little bit before we went on the air about the section on page 11. I'll read it, and then I want you to share what you were telling me. Do not try to think in advance what the solution to your difficulty will be. This is called outlining and will only delay the demonstration. Leave the questions of ways and means to God. You want to get out of your difficulty. That is sufficient. You do your half, and God will never fail to do God's. And then we also were talking a bit about looking over your shoulder, questioning the results, and so on. So can you talk a little bit to that?
Well, I think what he's getting at is that this act of thinking of God instead of your problem is a very present moment activity. It is something that requires your consciousness to be in the here and now and consciously, effectively working on it and doing it. But if you start wandering into the future, like, well, how is this going to happen? Okay, I'm thinking of the golden key, and I'm thinking of God, and God's going to fix my problem. And then you go, well, how? Geez, I only have this much money in the bank. I don't know how this is going to happen. How's God going to figure that? You're starting. He calls it outlining. I guess that's a technical term from Science of Mind and Ernest Holmes.
And New Thought, in general.
And New Thought in general, yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. That what you're doing is you're really kind of pulling it back into ego and saying, okay, well, how? It's okay. I'm not going to figure out how I'm going to fix this, but I'm going to try to figure out how God's going to fix this. You're still involving yourself and meddling, because so often it does happen in not necessarily the front door method when so many things are accomplished. Think of buying a car, or we talked earlier about finding an apartment. You try the normal methods and you do what you can do, but often it's at the last minute when you're ready to give up the hunt and the search, and you get lost and you go down a road you're not familiar with, and then you see a sign, room for rent, and that ends up being your apartment. Exactly. I sold a car once. I put an ad up online, and got some bogus calls, but nothing really worthwhile. And then I took it down, and the day I took it down, 3 people called. Oh, what happened? You took the ad down. Is your car still for sale? Like, I'd given up. I didn't even want to deal with it anymore. But apparently somebody was watching, and one of them ended up buying the car. So don't, again,
and you
it's
didn't
this
plan
other
that.
level of not.
You obviously
No, I didn't plan that. I didn't do that.
Yeah, there was no premeditated thought of, I'll make this, the idea of the car scarce, and that'll make them buy it. It was nothing on your part at all.
No, but what I did is I got out of the way. I quit trying, in the sense of that. How am I going to solve this? How am I going to figure this out? What is the solution to my problem? It's you have to move your feet, and you have to work your hands, so to speak,
exactly.
In the world. And yes, you're going to still put ads out for your car if you're selling it, or you're still going to look in classifieds for an apartment if you're searching for one. But so keep the motion, and that keeps you in the fight, in the spirit, keeps you in
the game, exactly.
All of that, exactly, in the game. But the way the game's going to be played out, that's not really up to you. So it's not rolling over on your back saying, "Okay, God, just take my troubles away." It's kind of like that, but it's not so passive.
Yeah,
still have to be active, but you can't meddle. Do your part, and then leave the rest. Leave the larger plan on the how.
You mentioned
you need to focus on what you want, and why you want it, why it's important to you to heal or find peace in your work life or home life or whatever it is that's troublesome. But the method, and what do you call it? The ways and the means.
Yeah, and I like to
leave that to the higher source.
Exactly. I like too, when we were talking earlier and about some of the mythology that's associated with that, and I had mentioned Lot looking back over his shoulder, or Lot's wife, and she turned into a pillar of salt. That's from the Bible. And you mentioned what was it, Orpheus and Eurydice? No.
Yes, when he went down to the underworld to rescue her, he made a deal with Hades and brought her back up. And the one rule was don't look back.
Don't look back
until you get to the top. And they were, the finish line was in sight. And he just kind of, I just want to take a peek. It's the same thing you do in the kitchen. You don't keep opening the oven or lifting the lid off the pot or stopping the microwave, or you can't just keep checking the progress. The plants, you don't plant them in the ground, then dig them up every night to see how much the roots are growing. You're going to get in the way of it, and you're going to really kind of ruin dinner that way. And the same thing, so it's also, it brings the ego back into it. That if you're saying, okay, well, how's this going? You're looking over your shoulder, like you mentioned, then you're not trusting in the divine spirit and the higher power. I'm just going to check on it. It's like, well, and I, honestly, a little confession here. It made me think of some trouble I had with cooking. I don't know if it's a trust issue or what, but I wasn't a baker or a broiler. I didn't want to stick something in the oven and at a certain degree and come back in 30 minutes. I have glass lids on the stoveware. I want to see what's happening.
You want to watch the pot as it boils, is what you're saying.
Well,
even though a watched pot never
I've gotten better with it. If I follow the recipe, I can stick something in the oven without having to pull it out and check it every 5 minutes and ruin the whole thing. So, but that's made to be part of human nature.
It is.
And it plays out for me in the kitchen.
That's why it needs to be pointed out, and that's the beauty of the simplicity of all this wisdom and the things that we're going through in these different books. They're things we oftentimes innately know, or there's quote unquote common sense, but we need to be reminded of them and we need to use them. I mean, and that's the challenge. And it gets back to the original premise of this whole golden key philosophy. Stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. I mean, it's really just a placement of, it's a change of placement of attention. I'm taking my attention and focus, right? I'm taking my attention and my focus from the problem and putting it on the solution.
I think this may inadvertently, or this is something we need to discuss, present kind of a difficult situation for the person, me, you, anyone else wanting to use this golden key technique, is that if you can't think of the problem, okay, won't do that, and I'm supposed to think of God instead. But he also says in there, don't think of any image of God. Don't conjure up, I don't remember the exact, do not try to form a picture of God, which is, of course, impossible. So I think what he's trying to say is, get out of the way of if it's, this religious figure or, then you're stuck in a construct, in a concept that's intellectual, and visual, and you're conjuring this thing and kind of what it is and what he looks like.
Well, you're outlining universal. You're outlining what God is then, and you're limiting the infinite nature of the divine, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of hard to do sometimes. But he gives, and then forgive the pun, or maybe wholly accept the pun. The key to that is the key. And this is what I do, and this is where I found kind of the middle ground that really works for me.
Okay.
If I can't think of the problem, but I can't think of an image or concept of God either, what do I think about? What's the picture in my mind? And I literally think of this visual representation of a golden key. And for me, it's an old skeleton key, and it's gold. It's radiant, and it has a luminescence quality. There's sort of a glowing, radiant aura around it, surrounding it, and it's usually dangling in space. It's not really attached to anything or anyone. And what I do is I'll either place that over my head, if if my head's
Okay.
troubled, which is
Yep.
sometimes the case,
Yeah.
and when I need a solution, a quick solution like this that's ready at hand. I'm not thinking about me. I'm not conjuring up some image of sky god, and I'm thinking of this key, and it's glowing and it's radiant. But it's more than just a key, and the key is not to be mistaken for the higher power. For me, it becomes a touchstone. It becomes this something that represents not so much the actual higher power, but the gateway to it. So this, by turning this key, that it unlocks the door, and behind that or through that is this God power. I don't have to see it,
Yeah.
and I don't have to conjure it. But if I'm held with the key is a link to source, and it's also my victory over the problem. So that becomes this mediating image that gives me something to, because you got to think of something. Try not thinking of a
That's
pink elephant,
exactly.
and you're going to think of a pink elephant all day because you're trying not
Sure.
to. But
It's a way to concretize the symbol and the image within your, in your own imagination, right? But not necessarily still sort of following the rules of what he's saying in terms of allowing God to be infinite and without form.
Yeah.
But this is a touchstone for you to connect to that energy, that's symbolic image. Dude, that's a fantastic way of doing it. Thanks for sharing that. I hadn't really even thought of that. So, and you've tried it and used it and worked with it and for you. So that's a beautiful piece of information.
And
for
if
the
it's
listener.
a person or a situation, I used to imagine the golden key, hovering over my old workplace, that was giving me troubling thoughts after leaving there after so many years.
Yeah.
Or if it's a person, either directly in my life or maybe somebody I don't know that's in the news, or something is troubled or troubling me, I throw up this golden key image, and it's kind of in front of them or this person, and they get a little obscure because this radiant aura that's surrounding this key, and I know that then God's energy is going there, and it's not me, because I'm not trying to solve it, because I'm going to bring anger and resentment if I'm upset with somebody, or whatever, or just my own limitations. It's this has worked for me. I'm glad we're talking about this book. It's a good reminder, and probably want to bring it back into my regular practice.
I feel the same way, and it was a very fortuitous study for me, because I actually, as I said at the beginning of the show, that I used this just very recently, and so it's something that works. It's something that's very practical, and it is a way to solve your problems with scientific prayer. And it's a simple, but as he pointed out, not necessarily easy thing to do, in that, you have to work at filling your mind with the ideas of God. And as you pointed out, Chris, you can use an image of a luminous golden key. You can use feelings, if you want to focus on the power of God or you being a child of God, and then also using affirmations such as there is no power but God, I'm the child of God, filled and surrounded by the perfect peace of God, God is love, God's guiding me now. And the simple one that he said is perhaps the best and simplest of all is God is with me. God is with me. And that's a really valuable thing to remember and to affirm, because we all are part of the infinite. We're all partaking of that divine nature. It's not something outside. It is something outside, but it's also something inside. So that's a simple way for us to reconnect, to kind of clear the get the ego and the problems out of the way, and just focus ourselves on the solutions. So with that being said, I don't know if you have, we're almost out of time. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to what you were saying before?
I do, and just tagging along with what you just ended with, that getting out of the way and allowing these forces to work like we do when we sleep, and hopefully some healing forces take over. But it's not, again, I talked before about not being passive, but this is where it gets interesting. Once you do turn it over and you're golden keying your situation or yourself or your boss or your significant other or whatever you have going on, and you're focusing on the benevolent and the beautiful and the good and the one and the strong and the powerful, all knowledgeable source, what's going to happen then is, as you do open this clear channel, you will be motivated. You will see things. You will see the next thing to do. Things that aren't clear. You're still going to be doing something. If it's, you talked about finding an apartment or selling a car or whatever it is, or if it's working through a difficult relationship, you're going to run into this person again. You're going to meet up at the water cooler at work, or she's going to call you into her office, or you're going to bump into on the sidewalk, or whatever. I mean, if it's somebody you're involved with, you're going to, or if it's somebody distant, you're going to have those thoughts again. They're going to come up again. So this will have to be faced again, but with this clear channel, when that happens, you're going to approach it in a little different way because you're already more calm and you're already using this higher power leading the way, not you leading the way, but that's already there first. You have this golden key energy, and maybe you're not going to react as much or take it as personally. Maybe you're going to say, well, gosh, maybe this person is really a jerk. Maybe they're hurting in some way, and I'm just going to listen and maybe they're not really mad at me. Maybe they're just mad at everyone, or maybe they're mad at themselves and they're taking it out on me. And it changes the recipe. It changes the dynamic a little bit to where you are feeling and reacting and thinking and doing things a little bit differently. Also with this clear, calm, surrendered attitude and point of view, you're going to see things that maybe you missed before, opportunities or signals, or just, I'm not going to react this way this time. I'm going to do this naturally. So it's an evolutionary. I mean, it's going to evolve as it improves, and you are going to be doing things, but your doing is going to come after the leading with this God power and this, thinking of the good and the wonderful and the benevolent and the powerful. And that's leading your thoughts and your emotional energies. So, you're not going to be wrapped up in the drama. You're not mechanizing on how you're going to try to fix or solve this.
Sure, exactly.
You're just going to, you're either that or you're just going to miraculously just not overreact next time.
Yeah,
so again, you'll be doing things, but it will be informed and influenced by this technique.
Great point. And, as we get back to, we circle back to Jesus' words, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and all else will be added unto you.
The first.
Simple.
I like that.
Simple
Leading
and
with
profound. Yeah.
We usually go to spirit as a last resort. Which is fine. We can do that too.
No. But you're also...
not try it first.
No,
it's
a
novel
fantastic way to look at it. All right, so we have been speaking about The Golden Key by Emmet Fox. You can find this at unity.org and download it for free. There's a great version of that, or you can get the little booklet that they offer as well. There's a special Unity edition pamphlet that I have. It's a great little book. I think it's 75 cents or $1 or something. You can order a bunch of copies if you like from Unity. I'll probably find it on Amazon as well. And it's a nice little book to have and to give out if you run into someone who is dealing with problems. And again, you can use this technique to deal with your own problems, whether it's, an anxiety attack or a financial issue or trying to find an apartment or, trying to heal a sickness, whatever it is. It's a very practical method of working through those challenges. Another book I'd like to recommend, and you like this book as well, is Emmet Fox's The Sermon on the Mount, the key to success in life, and his interpretation of Jesus' words. That's a fantastic book. And The Art of Meditation by Joel S. Goldsmith is a really nice book that kind of continues along this line of this line of thinking. So both of those are great tools. Well, thanks again for joining us on Cosmic Eye Show. Thank you, Chris, for your insights today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And as I spoke about at the beginning of the show, your book is The Spirit in the Sky, and they can purchase that on Amazon or at chrissheridan.com. And my book is If You Can Worry, You Can Meditate at cosmiceye.org or on Amazon as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and golden key those problems. Thanks, Chris, again. And everyone have a great week, and God bless. We will be back next week with a new show, and we're going to figure out what that is after we're done here. So thank you for joining us on Cosmic Eye.
Thank you for listening, and please join us next Sunday for a new episode of Cosmic Eye. You can purchase If You Can Worry, You Can Meditate at Amazon.com or through our website, cosmiceye.org.